Good evening. This is Maestro Cotello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 3v3 on Leyrus Jungle Gate. Our first player today is Ace of Swords, playing as the Warp Spider Exarch. The Warp Spider Exarch is a teleporting hero. He mostly fights in range, but he can certainly tie things up as well with those dual power blades, especially if you upgrade them to get those heavy melee blades. Next up, we got SuperHooper, playing as the Plague Champion. The Plague Champion starts off as a ranged hero. He is a Chaos Marine dedicated to the god of Nurgle. He can also repair, he can support vehicles that way, he can also heal infantry, and he can also equip some melee weapons. Next up, we got GiDDoLo. GiDDoLo is playing as the Techmarine. Techmarine right here is a ranged hero to start out, can also switch out to get a melee weapon. He also has guns for every occasion, and he can also support vehicles very, very well with repairs. Here we got like a taxi cab color, although it's really Imperial Fist, but it looks like a taxi cab. On the other team, we got PhatE as this big orky warboss, chasing GiDDoLo around with his big chain axe, getting a hit on some of those tactical marines. He is a tanky melee hero. He has a stomp ability for disruption. He is also just very tanky and runs forward and is very aggressive. Next up, we got hiveminion, playing as the Tyranid Hive Tyrant, yet another tanky melee hero. This one cannot be knocked down or suppressed. He is the tankiest tanky melee hero to start out and also does more damage than most of the other tanky melee heroes. And then finally, we got classy Brother Captain David as the Akimbo Toothbrush Force Commander. He is also a tanky melee hero, yet another one. He can be knocked down and suppressed, but he does have that battle cry ability, which we see him using right there. Allows him to do special attacks with every strike. Very good for disrupting melee units, as well as buffing his allies. So, Force Commander chasing down these Banshees, but at this point, the Force Commander, I think, needs to be careful. Battle Cry has worn off, so now he's going to be somewhat vulnerable, and this might actually be a wiped, or no. Alright, if anything, the Howling Banshees are overextending themselves, and they're going to get wiped. In fact, they are. So, Howling Banshees getting wiped for Ace of Swords. I was wrong, but I definitely still felt it was a little risky with the Force Commander continuing to chase down Banshees when Battle Cry was no longer active. He could have risked getting hit by a special attack and then getting incapacitated. But luckily, David knew what he was doing. He had support from the rest of his squads. I like this play right here. He's got the tax, hopefully in cover. It seems like kind of, but maybe not quite. Just tanking the damage from all of these units from Ace of Swords that are in the bunker, and letting the tax do whatever damage to the Dire Avengers and the Warp Spider Exarch they can. Meanwhile, the Force Commander is just capturing the point while the Tactical Marines are drawing the aggro. That's a new term that I've learned, draw aggro. David, unfortunately, not able to get that point captured. SuperHooper now here to support with his Plague Champion, and we also had Rangers. So we actually have a contested power farm set up by the red team. Going to get quickly destroyed by SuperHooper's Noise Marines. But SuperHooper needs to be a little bit careful with just the composition that he had right there. His Chaos Space Marine and his Noise Marines against the Termagants and the Hormagaunts. He was going to have a little trouble really keeping the Hormagaunts at bay. Right here, he'll probably use Cacophony, disrupt those Termagants of the Hormagaunts a little bit, and that's going to allow his Chaos Heretics to get in. The Noise Marines are already taking a lot of damage, though, so they might want to go before they lose a model. Generally, you don't really want to lose Noise Marine models, and you really don't have to with them having 1,000 health, especially in Tier 1. You should be able to avoid having them lose models. Sometimes, though, with Noise Marines, you actually expose yourself to ranged fire when you use Cacophony, because you use it to counter a melee unit, but then your Noise Marine is not shooting at your opponent's range units. So your opponent's range units are actually just opening up on your Noise Marines, doing a lot of damage to them while they're just playing some dubstep to knock over some melee units. Assault Marines from GiDDoLo going down, nearly taking out the Shooter Boy, coming very, very close, but I don't think the bolt pistol shots will be able to finish it off. Certainly a close call for PhatE. and I think he even missed with his stomp that he was using to protect it. PhatE right now is going for the combination of the spiky armor and the angry bits. This is a combination that I think people recently have been saying is a little too good. Spiky armor returns damage to units that attack the Warboss in melee. It also increases the Warboss's health and his health regeneration. The Angry Bits ability increases his health regeneration as well. So I think what people have been saying is a little too good with this is the health regeneration he gets from the combination of these two. Not so much the spiky armor returning damage. For the purpose of countering melee, Cyborg Implants is generally considered better overall, if not straight up better, period. But the combination of spiky armor and the Angry Bits for regenerating health definitely has been said to be a little too good. So he's regenerating some health right here. I mean, he's definitely regenerating some health. It doesn't look that bad, but he's still regenerating health faster than most others would. There he took damage from a Techmarine mine. So we have Artificer mines from GiDDoLo. Wow, so that's... I feel like you don't see that very often, the Artificer mines. Certainly not from a lot of the Techmarine players I see these days. Certainly... Red Rupee definitely used to use those Artificer mines a lot, but he was actually a very dedicated Techmarine player, one of the only Techmarine mains in existence ever, and he would actually use those Artificer mines. I rarely see other people use Artificer mines with the Techmarine. So we see right now that Hive Tyrant is just leading the charge, and he did upgrade to have the extended carapace to help him do that. Unfortunately, for some reason, his charge stopped short of the Guardian weapon team, and that really hindered the red team's advance right there. I felt that was his goal, and it really looked like to me that the Hive Tyrant was just going to charge through that entire blob. For some reason, it stopped short of the Guardian weapon team, and then it was taking a huge amount of damage from the Guardian weapon team, and the red team actually got hit pretty hard in that engagement. Not too hard, but they certainly didn't win it by any stretch. Meanwhile, over here, GiDDoLo is bashing generators. Looks like PhatE got forced off, and GiDDoLo actually bashing without a flamer. He could upgrade to a flamer and then bash this a lot more efficiently and also just straight up more quickly. PhatE, meanwhile, does have burners on his sluggas. He seems to always get burners on his sluggas, and it will help him. If he can make a push to this power farm over here, he will probably get a full wipe. It's actually very, very good to have an Orc player in this bottom lane, because they will be very, very good to bash the power farm if and when they can get that far back there. And it seems like maybe PhatE should be able to do it, especially he took out the Techmarine. That's going to hurt GiDDoLo's ability to stay in this lane, especially since it's going to be very, very tough for him to get a revive. But Ace of Swords says he's actually going to attempt a revive, and it does help that he is playing as the Warp Spider Exarch. So maybe we'll see a bash on this power farm over here before GiDDoLo finishes building that Dreadnought. Meanwhile, over here, the Hive Tyrant this time does manage to get in against this Guardian weapon team, and now that he's done that, that really clears the way for the rest of both his army and David's to advance. We do see a plasma grenade actually somehow manages to miss everything. Had some pretty close calls, almost hit some things, but PhatE actually choosing not really to push forward. Where are his sluggas? His sluggas must be in a building or something. I have no idea where PhatE's sluggas are, but he was not able to get a generator bash off at all. Oh, they're in the truck. There we go. Back over here. Blastmaster Noise Marine unfortunately misses a lot of the best targets. I think this Noise Marine should really prioritize the Tyranid squads, the Hormagaunts and the Termagants, as opposed to any of the Space Marine squads. Alright, we have some Howling Banshees upgrading to their Exarch, going to fight these Hormagaunts. Hormagaunts are definitely not going to win that engagement, but now they're getting support in the form of Shotgun Scouts, but the Shotgun Blast is on cooldown, but also the damage is coming from those Flame attacks, and the Howling Banshees do need to get the hell out of there. Meanwhile, this is definitely going to be a pretty significant generator bash, although it looks like David right here is bashing one at a time. With any kind of flamer unit, you can also do attack ground, and then you can actually attack multiple generators at once. Apparently this was a laggy game, Sad to hear it. Looks fine in the replay, but of course that's because it's the replay. And David actually does retreat out of there. And he's going to retreat with minimal losses. Meanwhile, managing to wipe all of the generators, but not able to finish off the node. Still a pretty big win for the red team, I think. Meanwhile, we do have this War Truck right here. War Truck is going to give PhatE a lot of mobility. But that being said, GiDDoLo is going to take advantage of the fact that PhatE is no longer in his lane to just go ahead and bash the power farm. Now, GiDDoLo doesn't even have to get a flamer attack. He can just use the Dreadnought flamer. He also just has so many things over here uncontested. Now, actually, he chose to buy a second Tactical Marine Squad that he will probably wipe out this entire power farm. But right now, the Dreadnought is doing nothing. We also have a Techmarine who has upgraded to have the Axe of the Mechanicum to make him a melee Techmarine. All right. Even though the Dreadnought's doing nothing, we'll probably see most, if not all, of these generators go down. Back up here, Assault Marine's definitely getting overextended, losing 2 models, and we have the... that's also very scary positioning for the Librarian to be that far forward. We have a Blastmaster Noise Marine destroying SuperHooper's own Shrine of Nurgle, but it was going after, I think, that Tyrant Guard. And wow, do we already have a D-Cannon out from Ace of Swords? Yes, in that building. We also have the combination of the Rending Talons and the Extended Carapace from the Hive Tyrant. That's allowing him to charge as well as disrupt with the Seismic Roar ability from the Rending Talons. We also have a Brood Nest from hiveminion, going to function a lot like a bunker, except you can't go inside of it. Basically just giving health regeneration as well as reinforcement to all of these units who are over here. And really going to do a lot to help the red team hold this top point. Now, compared to something like a bunker, a Brood Nest is much more easily destroyed because it only has 300 points of health. Another thing that's also not so good about this Brood Nest is that since it's a Tyranid building, it can't be repaired. So it can't really tank damage under fire. It regenerates over time when it's not taking damage. So that's one of the things that I personally know as a sorcerer player, is that I can destroy a Brood Nest entirely with just by using a single Dark Flames. I think Dark Flames cost more than a Brood Nest, but it's just if I want the Brood Nest gone, I can use a Dark Flames every time to take out a Brood Nest. So the Brood Nest just much more easily destroyed than other similar structures. Force Commander going in right here. He does have the Power Sword, allowing him to increase that damage bonus from on Battlecry from 10% to 15%, but the Force Commander goes down. I feel like the Assault Marines are overextended. Maybe they should have used a Merciless Strike before they got out of there, if they had the energy, which I'm not sure that they did. And whoa, we have 3 Tyrant Guards. And GiDDoLo adding an exclamation point to that. 3 Tyrant Guards, I think, is going to win over a Dreadnought. That's actually going to be a lot of ability to push forward. And all 3 Tyrant Guards just going for this Dreadnought right here. The Dreadnought is going to die if it just fights these 3 Tyrant Guards. It can kind of run away. The Dreadnought, I believe... Yeah, I mean, it can kind of run away. There we have a phase shift, actually. It stops one of the Tyrant Guards, but 2 are still in pursuit. And the Tyrant Guards actually get hit by the Orbs of the Omnissiah. You don't see that ability. I feel like you don't see that that War Gear very often, or maybe just not often enough, but it didn't even seem to do much to the Tyrant Guard. Certainly burn their energy. Oh, man, Hive Minion got hit hard by, I think, a combination of a Plasma Cannon or a D-Cannon shot, as well as a Noxious Cloud. And Hive Minion just lost all of his Termagants. And I don't know why GiDDoLo is being very aggressive now with this Dreadnought. We still have 3 Tyrant Guards out on the field. They could just turn around, go for this Dreadnought, and frankly, they would win. All right, PhatE now using his mobility to go for that Generator Bash. He's targeting the node first. But now he needs to be careful because GiDDoLo is moving back over here. GiDDoLo actually has a pretty scary army. Double missile attacks. He needs to move the War Truck back now. It would be... the War Truck is probably not going to survive this engagement. It's cutting it very, very close. Does get hit by a Melt-A-Bomb. One more hit on anything from that War Truck, and it is done. Doesn't matter what. well, one more hit from an AV weapon. And actually, it could even go down to things that are less scary than an AV weapon. Scouts are trying to repair this Dreadnought. As it's under, the Warboss takes out the Dreadnought. Combination of using both of the Warboss globals right there, both Ardboys and Use Your Choppas on the Warboss right there, making him incredibly tanky while also doing a ridiculous amount of damage. And he was just able to solo the rest of that Dreadnought. And even gets out of there with the War Truck alive. So PhatE, although he was pushed back, he definitely came out on the better end of that engagement, taking out a Dreadnought while really losing nothing of his own. Here we go with another phase shift from the Warp Spider Exarch. The phase armor is the only thing he has. Ace of Swords went for a must have gone for a very light build. As it is, he lost his Dire Avengers, but I think he just went Dire Avenger, Rangers, Howling Banshees, and then he went all the way to Tier 3. Because his next unit was a D-Cannon and then an Autarch, and he also did not get much in terms of war gear on that Warp Spider Exarch, aside from that phase armor. Phase armor is an ability from the Warp Spider Exarch that just does, will basically do a area of effect stasis. So that's like a stun, except for the fact that none of the units in stasis, friend or foe, can be damaged at all. This is probably going to be a Warp Spider call-in, I think. And in fact, it is. Warp Spider call-in, a great choice in many ways. You just put a Warp Spider squad out on the field very, very cheaply. It does cost red, of course, but I believe the requisition cost is a mere 350 and no power whatsoever. So that's very, very cheap to get a squad as good as these Warp Spider Exarchs. However, you still need to pay the power for the Exarch, for the Warp Spider upgrades. So Hive Tyrant just charges in right there. Warp Spiders need to teleport away from this Hive Tyrant. Should try to teleport away as he's charging in. Since those Warp Spider Exarchs, both, they do not want to be knocked down by the Hive Tyrant, and they're also one of the primary tools that Ace of Swords and the blue team in general is going to be using to counter the Hive Tyrant. Meanwhile, we got a lot of artillery coming out from the blue team. We got this D-Cannon, as well as a Blastmaster Noise Marine and a Fire Prism. These Tyrant Guards now getting a little overextended. One is in Shield Wall. Is that going to be a Singularity? It most likely will be. It's going to pull in the Zoanthrope. That's really risky positioning for the Zoanthrope. Activates its shield, but the shield already goes down. Needs to be very, very careful. Luckily, oh my god, that Zoanthrope. Such a close call, but the Zoanthrope will get out of there alive. Alright, back down here. We still have the Warboss being incredibly tanky, really doing what he does. Using Ardboys again on the Warboss. This Warboss only level 2. We're going to have a call-in right here. That must be a Venerable Dreadnought. No, it's Terminators. Just kidding. And there we go with a Stomp. That actually might prompt PhatE to switch over to the Cyborg Implant, since the Cyborg Implants is definitely better against a unit like the Terminators, because, well, I mean, his regular Stomp actually does virtually nothing to the Terminators, while the Cyborg Implant Stomp, the big Stomp, is going to be extremely effective against the Terminators because it stuns. We have some Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine fire going in right here. Tzeentch Chaos Space Marine is going to be doing a lot of damage to the Tyrant Guards. They're actually one of the best sources of damage against the Tyrant Guards, as long as the Tyrant Guards are not in Shield Wall, since the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines are one of the best sources of damage against super heavy infantry armor. Fire Prism going forward a little bit. I mean, I guess it's chasing after this one Tyrant Guard that's nearly dead, sighting with the Autarch maybe, and now this Tyrant Guard goes into Shield Wall, still taking hits from the Fire Prism. I don't think the Fire Prism can finish it off, though. It's going to get very, very close, and now this Autarch for Ace of Swords does go down in the process, so Ace of Swords now starting to lose some squads. I think they finally do manage to take out that Tyrant Guard, though. So Hive Minion now down to 2 Tyrant Guards, 1 still in base. And Ace of Swords also apparently lost his Rangers at some point. Back down here, we have more Use Your Choppas, nearly wiping some Vanguard Veterans. Oh no, the Vanguard Veterans, they just walk back into the Warboss and they get wiped. So GiDDoLo losing his Vanguard veterans. Oh no, and the Terminators are actually now also in a huge amount of trouble because we have a late game Weird Boy purchase from PhatE. Actually a fantastic choice to help deal with Terminators because it allows them to use that Warp Vomit to stun them. The Terminators might even be dead, just getting hit by all of these things right here. And that's the end of the Terminators. Doesn't even finish off those Slugger Boys. That was... GiDDoLo tried just as a last-ditch effort with those Terminators to wipe the Slugger Boys with Cleansing Flame, and it didn't even happen. Now, PhatE, he did lose... I think he lost a Shooter Boy squad, and he also lost a... He obviously lost his Warchuck, but I nevertheless feel that he came out on the far better end of that engagement, GiDDoLo having lost both Terminators and Vanguard veterans. We got double Fire Prisms now for Ace of Swords. That's going to do a lot to help the red team, or the blue team rather, hold their VPs. We had some VP disruption as well, or VP denial from the Great Unclean One. The Great Unclean One can be very good with his abilities in the late game for VP denial, using them to basically just control the VPs. Pretty much all of his abilities can potentially help out with that VP denial in some way. The Vomit, just good as an area of effect attack that does knockback. It's basically like a Plasma Cannon attack. It does Plasma Cannon damage. The Librarian cutting it very, very close here and actually does not die. So you can use the Vomit to do some VP denial. You can, of course, use his Foul Snare ability, the Flesh Hook-like ability to pull off single entities. Very good for taking heroes off of points. And you can use the Swarm of Flies to just disrupt squads or any disruptible squad that could be on a point and get it off. There is that Swarm of Flies doing disruption as well as infecting all of these units with the diseases and infections of Nurgle. Plasma Cannon now from classy Brother Captain David, taking some hits on that Great Unclean One. And we also have a lot of missile shots in, so that means GiDDoLo's in here right now, trying to help out his team. I feel these Fire Prisms are getting way too close, or they're just not moving back at a time when they really need to. Now, the positioning of this Swarm Lord doesn't look so good. It could risk going down, but we might also have one of these Fire Prisms going down. It's cutting it very, very close. One of the Fire Prisms goes down, and the Tyrant Guard, unfortunately, is sacrificing himself and does not take out that last Fire Prism. We even have PhatE now coming back up here, and nobody's in that bottom lane. Here goes that Fire Prism, just one more hit from that Warboss, and there goes that Fire Prism. So Ace of Swords taking huge losses from PhatE coming back up here. PhatE doing pretty well, even though he... Oh, that's a little bit scary, though, even though he lost he lost a Shooter Boy squad and a Warchuck. That's actually really not that big of a deal at all. He's actually doing very well. Hiveminion has lost 2 of his Tyrant Guards at this point, but he's also doing very well now with double Zoanthropes, as well as he still managed to keep his Swarm Lord alive. He pulled it back at the right time. And he has a late game Warrior Brood, this one with Adrenal Glands. I'm not sure why, maybe just to make his Hormigons more threatening. I mean, look at how much health they have. These Hormigons, when they have that much health, they really aren't that squishy anymore. I mean, considering they start out with 648 health.
An ally has gained control of a victory point.
I believe 648. Here is our rocks. GiDDoLo retreating through all that stuff, and his Tactical Marines actually dodging most of it, and that actually ended up being not such a strong rocks. Do need to be careful, and now the red team needs to be careful about pushing up into their own rocks. We have Touch of Nurgle on SuperHooper's Heretics, pushing back some of the red team stuff, but now they're leading the charge. Need to be very careful, and unfortunately that wasn't such a great Touch of Nurgle, because that was a Touch of Nurgle that those Heretics were still kind of outnumbered, and as much as Heretics get out of Touch of Nurgle, they're still Heretics. Librarian actually comes very, very close to going down. SuperHooper trying to finish them off with the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines, but they proved not to be they just weren't quite enough, and classy Brother Captain David just barely managed to get that Librarian out of there. Librarian, I think, might be fully upgraded. He certainly has the Force Staff, probably has Tome of Time. and maybe Gate of Infinity. Or Psychic Hood, rather. Oh, there's an Eldritch Storm. Wipes a bunch of things. Meanwhile, Ace of Swords also losing a bunch of things, nearly losing his Warp Spiders. And I think David may have lost a squad. Ace of Swords, meanwhile, he did lose his Warp Spiders. And now it's not looking good for this Great Unclean One. SuperHooper trying to help out. And it's a VP lead for the red team. They actually have a double cap. Meanwhile, the blue team down here pushing for that VP, or trying to hold their own VP. Blastmaster Shot doing a lot of friendly fire damage, way too much friendly fire damage, in fact. And we have GiDDoLo right here. A lone Scout Marine is capturing this point for the Imperium to keep them in the game. 1-to-1 cap, just buy the blue team some time to regroup or reconstitute and see if they can just stay in this game. And we had that whole Scout squad going to threaten that one Scout Marine, but he just runs the hell out of there. Now we have the combination of the Swarm Lord and the Las Cannon Predator. I think this is actually not a good engagement for the Swarm Lord and the Tyrant Guard. However, I think the red team might be taking back the VPs as this is happening. Oh no, Predator actually goes down. I wasn't expecting that to happen because we have a Hive Tyrant who actually switched out to the Crushing Claws so that he could do damage to vehicles. And we have GiDDoLo running low on units. And although the red team managed to take back their natural, the blue team is actually taking back the middle. I don't know how much longer they're going to keep it. The Plague Shame decides he needs to get the hell out of there. Now the Great Unclean One, depending on how much energy he has, can do a bit to disrupt and keep those units off the point, but he's actually running away because he probably is more concerned about getting killed entirely. So the blue team has a double cap, but yeah, SuperHooper getting his Great Unclean One out of there while it's still alive. He needs to bring up some support, and if he has something like a Vomit or a Swarm of Flies ready, he could also just disrupt them. Here we got a Tyranno formation. This is a Tyranno formation. Of course, it's from hiveminion because he's the only Tyranid player on the team. He actually got a new a new Tyrant Guard, but it's a double cap for the red team. So the blue team is going to need to make something happen. Need to get one VP, and we're going to have a Tyrant Guard or a Zoanthrope get wiped by some Banshees. They're either going to need to move up to one of these VPs, but both of the VPs are pretty well defended. They need to pick one, they need to go for it, and they need to just make it happen somehow, because otherwise they're done right here. Do we have a Plague of Undeath? Yes, we do. So we have the Great Unclean One right here. Great Unclean One needs to start going for things. But right now, they're too busy fighting the engagement. So far, it does not look like they're actually going to be able to win this engagement. We even have an orbital bombardment on top of that Land Raider. That Land Raider having trouble getting out of there, and it's going to die. The Land Raider explodes. And also to all of the squads. Oh man, GiDDoLo just got hit really, really hard. I think that is just straight up going to be the game in favor of the red team. As much as I have a habit of calling things early, it didn't happen this time. So, hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.